Hey everyone, I'm your host, Quinn Magnuson. Welcome to the EOR podcast, the show for leaders, high performers, and the secrets to grit, growth, and greatness. I want to ask you something. Are you an organization looking to build a rock-solid strategy that will grow your people and end up in increased productivity and profitability? Then I invite you to start by going over to our website, effortoverresults.com, and book your free strategy call directly with me. No obligation, no bots or sticky email campaigns, just a friendly one-to-one call so I can learn more about you and your team goals. So if you're ready to get real, go over to effortoverresults.com, book your free call today. And now, let's get back to the show. Today on the EOR podcast, our guest is Damon Lembi, CEO of Learnit, where he's led transformative growth in learning and development for almost 3 decades. A 2-time best-selling author and host of Learnit All podcast, Damon merges his Division I baseball experience with real-world business rigor. He's opened up about battling imposter syndrome, rebuilding through recession, and confronting health challenges head-on. Damon Lembi, welcome to the EOR podcast. Let's go. Good morning, everybody. Today, I have a very special guest. Damon Lembi is the CEO of Learnit. And you know what, Damon, we're going to get into what Learnit is because I'm super excited by that platform. And I just am doing the research and realizing that this company has been around for 30 years and your dad started it. And I want to get into that story because it's an incredible legacy story. And what you're doing with Learnit now is fantastic. But I pulled some quotes from you, all good quotes. You don't have to worry, from the internet and from the research that I've done on you over the last week here getting prepared for the show. And I'm going to read those quotes that stood out for me because they couldn't line up any better with the effort over results for philosophy than they do. I mean, like, it's perfect. And once again, why I have you on the show, obviously you and I hit it off in our first conversation, but at the same time, what you preach and the posts you post on LinkedIn and what you speak through your Learnit platform speaks to effort over results. So here's the first quote, and this one's from about a month ago on LinkedIn. Most people fear failure, but growth only happens outside of your comfort zone. One of the biggest failures is not trying at all or quitting too soon. And I don't know if we need to explain that. It hits hard. It's straightforward. I love the fact that it talks about there really is no failure. The only failure is when we quit, when we stop trying. And we keep fearing failure. But what I'm learning is that failure is not failure. It's really just, okay, how are we going to look at this differently? How can we try this differently? How am I going to approach this differently? What did I learn from this? And so I love that quote. Another quote, and that was from about 6 months ago. Fear of failure keeps many leaders stuck. Great leaders understand that setbacks aren't the end. They are opportunities for growth. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
What inspires these quotes? I mean, once again, they're relatively straightforward. It's there's nothing special there, but what's special about these quotes and what we preach here at EOR is that they're so simple mantras, such simple mantras, but they're 100% universal truths. What do you have to say to that?
I'm a simple guy, for one, and because I think when you make things too complex, it gets confusing. And those two quotes, I mean, I've really learned those over time. I mean, both you and I were professional athletes or very close to professional athletes. And I wish I knew now what I knew back then, especially when it came to baseball, because I dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome and self-doubt. But over time and learning, I realized that stop comparing ourselves to others, stop worrying about what other people think. And the worst thing you can do is pass up opportunities or freeze. Yeah. You always got to keep moving one way or the other. And it really isn't failure unless you just give up, because everything that you try that doesn't work out, first of all, you should give yourself a pat on the back, Quinn, because so many people are afraid to try things. But even if it doesn't work out, you can learn, you can grow, and you can get better next time.
Yeah, and I love what you said about opportunity, because I actually coined a term this year, and it seems to be sticking with people, is that there's opportunity in every conversation. And what I mean by that, it's not just podcast conversations. It could be someone you run into standing at a bus stop. It could be someone in the grocery store, just a little conversation that There's an opportunity to learn. There's an opportunity to get someone else's point of view, depending on how long the conversation is. There's an opportunity to grow from every single conversation, even if that conversation is a debate or someone you disagree with. It's an opportunity to grow. And the other thing I love to say about opportunity is, and what effort over results really speaks to, is we need to stop trying to be so specifically and like correct in terms of where we're headed in results and goals. So be directionally correct, not absolutely correct. Because when you're absolutely correct and you're fixated on one thing, you put blinders on and you have a tendency to lose those opportunities that may be waiting in the wings. And so taking those detours, having little failures, mistakes, all are opportunities as opposed to failures. There's one other quote that I pulled, and I love this one. Repetition is the mother of learning. Show up, do the reps. That's how you get better. And going back to our backgrounds in sports, that couldn't be more true. Obviously, myself in football and you in baseball. Where have you seen this really play itself out the most in your life? The repetition is the mother of learning.
Well, first and foremost in baseball, but I want to take one step back.
Yeah.
You mentioned my dad earlier, and
Yeah.
you talk about, not being absolute direction and just directional. It put a big smile on my face. I lost him 15 years ago to cancer, but he was the best. I mean, he would just go for it. And then he would learn and he'd figure it out and he'd pivot and he'd adapt. And he was a big time entrepreneur because of that kind of mentality, always moving forward compared to the people who had their 5 or 10 year business plan and they would think and they would tweak and nothing would ever happen, and so, but that is also an example of somebody like him and me getting the reps in, and trying and growing and evolving. For me, it was with baseball. I mean, I dealt with some imposter syndrome, like I mentioned, right after I was All American and drafted in
Right.
high school. And how I worked through it was just getting in the reps. I had a hard time hitting curveballs, so when I got over my imposter syndrome, I just had my pitching coach throw me 1,000 curveballs or hit me 1,000 ground balls, and that's the only way to work through it. And to carry it over in a business sense, for instance, like podcasting. I mean, the first time I was a guest on a podcast, I was miserable. I was scared to death. I stuttered a lot, and I think I probably went on. But I said, this is something I want to get better at. So I jumped on every single show that would have me, and I would do my best. And after it, I would say, hey, you know what? I'm always looking to learn and get better. What are 1 or 2 things that I can do differently? And I got a lot of great feedback from that. And I'm not saying I'm fantastic now, but I'm a work in progress, and I can't even go back and watch those. But if I did, I'd be proud of myself for the improvement I have made.
Yeah, aren't we all a work in progress? No matter how far we think we've gotten, we still can continue to work on ourselves, and that's that. And trying not to be perfect, trying not to be absolutely correct, but just being directionally correct, moving forward in a direction towards things that you're trying to achieve or that you love or that you're passionate about, and kind of just let God and the universe figure it out after that. Because effort over results really means all you can control is your effort. So put the effort in, put in the reps, as you put it, and let the results happen where they may. You can only massage and control what the outcome is. Well, and barely you can do that, but you can control what you do, your effort and your attitude. And I know that sounds super cliche and it's a sports cliche, but it's 100% true. There's really nothing more true in sports, but in life is you can only control your effort and attitude. Leave the rest to, like I said, to God and the universe. Let's talk about baseball for a second. And I'm going to get into some fun stuff later on towards the end of the show, but you were drafted 3 times, I read.
It's twice.
Twice. Okay. Well, I got
Should have been drafted 3 times.
Okay, Atlanta Braves, 13th round out of Burlingame High. The New York Yankees, 50th round, 1992. And then it said, and again after college, you chose not to sign. But you did play in a College World Series. So you and I both played NCAA sports at the highest level. Division I baseball, Division I football. What did the grind of Division I sports change for you? Because I know for me, it was really taught me how to live life in terms of that effort, in terms of the grind, in terms of the wake up in the morning and so forth. What did it teach you, and how does that translate into what you do with Learnit?
Great question. I like to call it the athletic education. And because when my baseball career ended, and I'll explain that in a second, I didn't know if any of my skills were transferable. And I'm like, I spent all my life being a baseball player, and here I am 22 years old, and my career's over with. What do I do next? Fast forward 30 years, now looking back on it, it taught me everything. discipline, resilience, persistence, collaboration. I'm sure as an athlete, I was talking to Christian Ponder, the ex-quarterback. He said, us athletes really crave feedback and drive. I think there's just so much. And what I like to tell your listeners and my friends and everybody, Quinn, you and I and your son, we got to D1 level in sports. Not everybody can do that. It's hard between schoolwork and everything else you do. And just going from high school to D1 is such a huge difference.
Mm.
But even if your kids are playing in eighth grade soccer or high school, you will pick up so many great learning lessons. And I don't think that there's anything, in my opinion, than sports for learning and setting yourself up for success in life.
Yeah, I wrote a LinkedIn article a couple months ago about that, why athletes for the most part, make the best employees and the best leaders. Now, once again, leadership, we can get into the definition of that later, but athletes, yeah, you're right. They have that drive, determination. They know what it takes to win. They are team players. They tend to be alpha, though, which sometimes can rub people the wrong way. But athletes are incredible leaders, and I know I've seen that in my son. Obviously, it's happened for you in your life. It's happened for me in my life. And I think so. Having said that athletes make the best employees, some of the best employees. At Learnit, your employee and your staff. Do you have any ex-athletes on your staff?
Yes, I'll get to that in a second. I mean, if you look at a study, I think something like 80%, don't quote me on this, but of female CEOs at Fortune 500 companies played
Yes.
college sports, something like that. Right there goes to show that. I would say we probably have 10 ex D1 athletes that work at Learnit right now. And I don't set that up like you could only work at Learnit if you are an ex-athlete. It just happens that way. I mean, I like to use the example of a gentleman on my team named Nick Silverthorne, who was an All-American swimmer at Cal Berkeley. They were number 2 in the country. Nick is late 20s, early 30s. He's coming on his 5th year here at Learnit, and he was an incredible work ethic. Coachable. That's another thing you learn. I mean, great athletes learn is the importance of being coachable. And we look for that in the interview process. And Nick even brought on one of his good buddies who was a customer service manager for our team for a year, Gunnar Bentz, who is an Olympic swimmer, won a gold medal. And so Gunnar worked here for a year. But yeah, we have ex-baseball players from Virginia and women volleyball players. And so, yes, I've got all kinds of ex-athletes. Swimmers, female swimmers from South Carolina, and
Yeah, and it regardless of gender, regardless of sport, right?
yeah.
Man, my daughter was a swimmer, and I swear I think swimmers probably work harder in the pool than we did on the football field, or maybe you guys did on the diamond. Just an incredible sport to be a part of. I want to go back to what your dad and the origins of Learnit. This started as your father's vision, obviously, and you speak very highly of him. So how have you honored his legacy while reshaping the company into what you want it to be today? And it's been 30 years, Damon, which is that
Wild.
blew me away when I read that, because I thought about online learning. And I remember, and I apologize for cutting off this question, but I remember being a teacher back in the early 2000s, like when I say early, like 2000, literally, and them talking about distance learning, right? And online learning. I'm like, that's never going to fly. That's for kids who, are super smart and can handle that whole thing. And I'm thinking, man, Learnit started in 1995, back when the internet barely existed, and if it did, it was dial-up modem. Let's talk about the early days. Let's talk about where you started with the company, and then now how you're honoring his legacy and reshaping Learnit in your image.
So yes, Learnit was my dad's vision. And a quick snapshot of him is our family was one of the largest real estate companies in San Francisco for a couple decades, mostly around multi-family housing, apartment buildings. We had a couple office buildings, all of these different things. And my grandfather started it after he got out of World War II. But my dad is really the one who accelerated the growth of of our family business. I don't think he gets enough credit for it. I mean, but anyways, in the early 90s, he's like, computers are hot. I love Steve Jobs. And that was his whole thing. I was still playing baseball. And he wanted to digitize our portfolio. So he went and he took a class at CompUSA, and he just thought it was kind of boring. He dragged my sister Chelsea, and he thought he sat there and it looked like the place was a hospital, sterile, expensive. And this gentleman read from a book, and he dragged Chelsea out of there, and he said, look, there's got to be a better way to do this. And like a lot of great entrepreneurs, he found a problem that he saw and a gap and looking for a way to solve it. we had a savings loan in the 80s. He called up the CFO from that savings loan and said, "You're the only guy I know who knows computers. I want to start this computer training company, and I want it to be quick and short and fun, and I want it to be a place where people can come mingle in San Francisco. I'll give you an office space, and let's make it happen." And that's where Learnit started. There wasn't no long business plan. He just threw the guy in there and said, "John, let's make this happen." And I remember I told this story at our 30th anniversary party. I remember the first time I heard this story. It was the night before I hit a 3-run home run at Arizona, of all places. And my dad was there. And the next morning, I went to go meet him for breakfast. He came up, he gave me a big hug because we won the series. We talked about baseball for 10 minutes. And then he's like, "I got this idea I want to show you." And his buddy Jorge, and he's like, "Give me my notepad." And so he talked about Learnit. He's like, "We're going to start off with computer training, but it's learn it." So it could be learn anything, from Spanish to leadership to whatever. And that's really where Learnit started. And I thought that was pretty interesting for about 10 minutes. And I'm like, but I got 20 more years of playing baseball. So what do I care about this idea? We had everything from a shopping center to a Chinese restaurant. He did all kinds of things. And so, but I went out there, hit a home run in the College World Series, and I was getting ready to be drafted for the third time. I was ready to go. I was in the hotel room because this is 1994. There was no internet. My best friend, Jacob Cruz, was my roommate. His call came first thing in the morning in Omaha because it was during the World Series. First round draft choice by the Giants. 10 other people, Quinn got drafted. My name never came up. I was pretty depressed because that was my identity. And I didn't really want to go the independent route. I was kind of over it. I fought my dad on that a lot because he wanted, but I was kind of over it at that point. I was not happy. And I didn't want to go work at the real estate company because I was intimidated. And like I mentioned, I wasn't sure if my skills were transferable. So I took a job as a receptionist at Learnit, and that's where I started. And I did that for two reasons. The first reason was I didn't want to be the silver spoon kid where, daddy puts him up in a high role. And I wanted to earn the respect of the 10 or 15 people we had there. And two, again, I didn't know if I was capable of doing anything. I mean, the only reason why I passed, my wife will hate me for saying this, computer DOS classes back in the day was I had a great tutor, Colleen Hayes, and who helped me at Arizona State stay eligible and learn computers. So that's where I did. I started as a receptionist. My dad never worked a single day at Learnit. It was just his idea and his passion, but he was very supportive. And Quinn, the first thing I recognized was that a lot of these people, and it wasn't just Learnit, but people in the corporate world didn't have the same drive that us athletes had. If we lost a deal, it was, "Oh, that's all right, no problem." If you showed up late, "Oh, that's no problem." And I'm like, what's going on around here? That's not the culture that I've seen. And since this was my family's business, this was my chance to show that I can give back for everything they gave me, and maybe I could be great at something. I just went all in on Learnit, and I started teaching classes, and I started doing sales, and there was no internet back then, really. First classes we did were Necessary Net, where you get a sandwich and a dial up for $25. Fast forward 5 years later, the guy wasn't working out as CEO. Our board were looking at other candidates, and I said, "Let me throw my hat in the ring. I've taught classes. I closed our biggest deals with Gap and Chevron." And my dad's like, "All right, kid, we'll give you a shot." And that was right around when you were teaching in 2000. And I thought I was like the greatest rock star CEO of all time. I'm here in San Francisco in the .com, and all you need is fax paper because people are just sending you contracts left and right. And then we all know what happened after that, where the market crashed. But that's kind of my initial story.
Just kind of your initial story. What a great story, though. Like, I have so many questions off that. Like, I want to go back to just even when your dad started it, and it's like, he sounds to me like the consummate entrepreneur, right? Usually people who are in real estate tend to be entrepreneurial. Obviously, it's passive income. There's a lot of work involved, but it's just growing wealth, right? And growing assets. And that's really where wealth comes from. But then the idea to start, if someone said, "I want to start this in 2010, to be like, okay, I get that. I mean, it's easy to do. Internet's already here. It set it up. But in 95, like, that's incredible. The other thing that really stuck out for me in what you said, Damon, going back to athletes and work ethic, but you talked about when you came out of college, and my son's going through this now because he's got 1 year left in football. And when you were coming out of college, did you feel a bit of, because athletes are so driven, did you feel a bit of that paralysis of, Well, I know I'm capable. I know I could do lots of different things, but I don't know which one to choose. And so I fear choosing anything. Did that ever cross your mind at all? Because I know that I hear that a lot with young athletes who are coming, especially those ones who during their 4 to 5 years at university in their Division 1 sport or just in sport in general, their life literally becomes the facility, the athletic facility, right? You live there, you eat there, you sleep there, you bond with your sisters and brothers, and that's really all you know. But you know you're capable, you know you have talent, you know you have drive, determination, and persistence. But then when it comes to, leaving college, there's a bit of that paralysis or fear of what do I do now? Did you feel that at all?
100%. Sort of. When I got done with baseball, because it was my whole life, that's all I ever really
Yeah.
wanted to do. I put all my eggs in one basket. And that's, like you said, all my friends were baseball players, plus my old buddies from kindergarten, right? And everybody identified me as a baseball player. You come home from, for Thanksgiving break, and you go to the local bar, and people would say, how's it going? Are you getting ready to get drafted? And that's everything, only thing you ever talked about. At my family dinner table, it was just me and my dad, and we talk about baseball, and my mom and the three other kids were at the other end, right? So that was it. And so when the baseball came to an end, I'm like, well, what do I do now? And I did think, hey, look, I did really well at baseball, even though this ended before I thought it would. There's got to be something that I'm great at. I have no idea what it is, but I'm gonna figure out what it is, and I'm gonna make it happen. Plus, I was very fortunate to come from a great family, not just my dad, but my mom and my friends and their family. And I didn't want to let them down. I wanted to be able to contribute. And like I mentioned, I had kind of big shoes to fill coming from, a Lembi background in San Francisco.
Mm.
So I didn't necessarily want to do the real estate stuff as my primary career, but I said there's got to be a way I could be great at something, and I'd really like to give back and contribute. And so here's this thing, Learn It. So maybe I'll jump in and do that. And that's where I just kind of got laser focused on it.
Well, and going from the receptionist to CEO in what was it, 5 years? I think you said. I love the fact that you didn't want to be what people would call a nepo baby, right? Nepotism. Your dad, dad's going to give you the big CEO job right out of the gate, or some high sales management job. No, you're like, no, I need to learn this from the ground up. So I'm just going to start here as reception and then work my way up. And I don't know if you even expected to be CEO that soon, but I love the fact you had the confidence because you obviously had the sales, you learned the company, you were teaching the classes online, and you're like, yeah, I think I'm ready for this. But those are big shoes to fill, right? So that's an incredible journey just right there. But it sounds like, you know what, I'm just going to put in the effort that I've learned from baseball, from sports, from life, and however this results is really just up to everybody else because I can't control anything besides my effort. Learn It. Let's switch over to Learn It because it's an incredible success story considering, like you said, the dot-com boom and the dot-com bust in San Francisco and just in general in the 2000s, and Learn It being an online platform. Let's start there. What happened when the dot-com bust happened to Learn It, and how did that affect the company? And was there ever a point where you felt like, is this the end?
Learnit's been through 3 economic downturns, and we started, and I'll answer that question, but we started doing online training, I would say around 2008 or 7, which was still way ahead of the game. Before everything was mostly or was all in person and mostly computer training. Now, I was a stubborn kid. Most of my friends were paper millionaires working for these .com companies and buying their new cars and all their houses and everything. And so I pushed for expansion early on around 1999 and against my dad and other people on the board or advisors advice. And because my dad's like, look, you have this brick and mortar business that's actually profitable and making money. All your buddies work for these smoke and mirror companies. It's not, you're going to see this can happen. But he still went along with my ideas, and we opened up like 5 other locations. .com crashed. And to be totally honest, if it wasn't for my family's financial support, we were done. We're out of it. But it reminds me of what you were saying earlier about just pushing forward and up to God or the universe or whatever it is, that something's going to happen. I remember sitting at Houston's restaurant in San Francisco, thinking about having to call my dad and grandfather, who's a tough cookie, earlier that day and saying, hey, Gramps, hey, Dad, how's it going? And they're like, hey, Damon, by the way, can I borrow $20,000 to cover payroll? And then my grandfather would typically just blow up at me, but he'd always do it. And I would be thinking at that Houston's restaurant, that's just a year of college for one of my sisters or somebody.
Yeah.
But I never gave up. I said, we're going to make this through. And my dad believed in it. My grandfather went along with it. And there was probably 3 or 4 years which were just miserable. And if I didn't have their support, I wouldn't have made it through. And my dad's like, don't feel guilty about it. You've got like the most real world expensive MBA of all time. So, but you're going to do it, kid. And I did. And it's a longer story, but I found a way to pay back millions of dollars through Learnit and other things that we did that for the support they gave me. Now, what I learned from that is, one, I just never gave up. That was it. And two, when the economic downturn came in, I learned from the mistakes that I made in 2000 and didn't make the same mistakes again. And I think that's important for everybody out there on your show. It's totally fine to make mistakes. I mean, if I didn't have my financial support, I would have been out of business. But the biggest mistake I learned there is purposeful awfulizing. Before you make big moves like I did, you should think in the future, 1 year out. If worst case scenario happens, if a black swan happens, can we survive it? And I probably would have done things differently if I would have looked at it that way. But by 2009, I took the things that I did learn, implemented them right off the bat, because my family's business was crashing because of real estate. So I didn't have a penny to back us up. And by the way, after around 2002, never since have I ever had to borrow any money. It's all been bootstrapped, for Learnit. So you learn all those mistakes. Sure, there have been a couple times where I thought things were over, even in the beginning of COVID. But
Right.
through having a great team, a great support, and people around me, those are the ones who helped us make it through and
Wow.
thrive.
Yeah. I don't want to get into this because I have a really specific question, but you mentioned COVID and how obviously COVID, but I would have thought that, well, no, sorry. I would think that the online learning during COVID would have ramped up. But then having said that, the companies that you would be your clients were either operating at less, probably didn't have the extra resources to pay into online learning. Their people weren't, they were working from home potentially, or some companies just shut down. So I can see how that would affect your industry. I do want to go back to this question because I love the relationship between you and your father and even your grandfather. And I want to know, when you were growing up and even leading into being a young baseball player, but what were some of the things you remember that your dad would say to you that were those life lessons that were sort of the mantras that you carried on, to your kids? Because once again, through my research, I know it's been mentioned that, you expressed to Lucy and Wally that, and those are your children, that it's all about just process over outcome, which basically is just a different way of saying effort over results. So I love that. Is that what
It's
your dad?
exactly how I live.
Yeah.
Exactly how I live.
Is that how
it's
your
all
dad
about effort over results?
Isn't
Yeah.
it? And is that how your dad raised you and your grandfather raised him? Like what's the lineage there in terms of what was told to you growing up?
How my dad and mom raised me is probably polar opposite of how my grandfather raised my dad.
Mm.
My dad and my mom were very present in the kids' lives. They put us as first. My grandfather was not very present. My grandfather worked 80, 100 hours a week and wasn't around very much. And I think he realized that later on in his life. He lived to 101. I mean, he fought in both, theaters of World War II. He was a tough guy, and he loved me because I'm the oldest grandkid. I was the oldest grandkid, so I had a great relationship with him. But I think my dad wanted something more, and my dad had a much bigger heart. And it may not necessarily, Quinn, be the things that my dad told me. It was just kind of the behavior that he did. Like, for instance, I got a great story in my book, The Learn It All Leader, about how his car would always be parked in this fancy parking lot. I mean, he had a Bentley, and it was in the front of the parking lot. And one day he told me, "Hey, kid, go get my car." And so I did. And so, everybody in the parking lot are, Hispanics, African American men, and they'd always be, "Learn it, learn it, learn it." And so one day they said, "Do you know why your dad's car is always parked in the front?" I said, "No, I never really thought of it." And they said, "Because all these high-level CEOs and big shots come in here, and none of them treat us like human beings, but your dad knows our name. He shakes our hand. He asks us how our kids are doing, and he treats us like peers." And, that's just, so that was one thing that I always learned. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're the barista at Starbucks or the CEO of some billion-dollar company. He didn't care. He actually preferred the parking lot attendants.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I learned. I also loved his moonshot goals that he would take. And then I would go to some of, whether it was at the mortgage company had where he'd get up in front of 300 agents and give some big speech, just off the cuff, really, or when he's coaching my soccer team and told us how we're going to win, and just so inspiring. And so those are really more of the things that I learned. I mean, sometimes he was tough on me when it came to baseball. He was, he'd get pissed if I didn't swing at the first pitch fastball or whatnot. But overall, I mean, there was just so many learning lessons, not directly from him saying things to me, but you could just tell that he loved me and support, and was, I don't want to choke up, but very proud. You know what I mean? Very proud. And that's that was special. And then my grandfather, who is like one of the toughest guys of all time, but when he would come to my baseball games, and he didn't know anything about baseball, but when I came up to bat, Quinn, he would go stand at the other side of the stadium by himself, and I remember my first college home run. I hit a 3-run homer off the scoreboard at Florida State, and I got the ball and I gave it to him. And that was like one of the most things he was most proud of. And I actually got it back after he passed away, but he had it in his office. But yeah, it was just a great experience. All those, I mean, there's rocky roads, and just like every family and every business, and ups and downs. And like I mentioned, our family business fell apart, but it's been a great ride overall.
I'm getting emotional hearing that story. That's I'm sure you are, obviously, because that's your
Yeah, I'm
life.
trying not
Man,
to, but yeah.
I have stories like that with my grandfather too, and playing baseball. I loved baseball as a kid, and the Montreal Expos were my team. Absolutely loved the Expos. I was
Tim Raines.
crushed when they left Montreal. In fact, one of the last games I ever saw live, I was playing for the Montreal Alouettes in the CFL Professional League, and we had practice that morning, and then at Olympic Stadium, and then in the afternoon the Expos played. And I stuck around the facility, Olympic Stadium, and just watched the Expos play to, like, I think it was like 4,000 people. It was so sad at that point.
Who was your favorite Expo?
Thank you for asking that, because I have a lot, but man, Gary Carter.
Gary Carter.
My gosh, I loved anybody wearing the number 8. So, but Gary Carter and Carl Yastrzemski from the Red Sox were my two favorites growing up. They both wore 8, which is incredible. But Gary Carter, I don't know what it was about him. I played catcher too growing up as a kid. And so I love Gary Carter. I love catchers in general, but for some reason, Carter, the kid, right? The kid from California, Culver City, was just, he just seemed so wholesome and genuine and honest. And when he left the Expos to go to the Mets, I was super sad, but at the same time, I was absolutely ecstatic when he got to win a World Series with the Mets. So yeah, Gary Carter is my favorite. And then I think after that, to be honest, I think actually Tim Wallach was my next favorite player. Played third base for the Expos. So whenever I wasn't catching and I got to play third base, I always imagined I was Tim Wallach.
That's so funny.
I know, right?
I like Tim Raines.
Yeah, Tim Raines, man, this base steal and demon, man. He was man, that Expos team in the 80s was Bill Gullickson, Steve Rogers, Andre Dawson.
He was great too.
Gosh, Chris Spire. Like, I'm just thinking about all this. You're just taking me back to my childhood and all the baseball cards I have sitting in a closet here. And then Carl Yastrzemski reminded me of my grandfather, and that's what I loved about him, is they looked the same. And my grandfather was a heck of an athlete for, living in the 1920s and 30s. But yeah, man, baseball really was my life. And it's so funny now because I don't follow baseball at all anymore, even though, like, I'll watch a World Series when it happens. But that relationship you had with, yeah, go ahead.
I don't really follow baseball that much anymore myself. I mean, I'll take the kids to the game, or I'll go to a local independent league baseball game. But I think that things change over time. Your priorities change and shift. And I still like baseball, and I kind of like watching tennis on TV or basketball. But a lot of times people think that I know every player on the Giants and what their stats are and what position they're in. But it's still fun, but it's just part of your life.
You know what? I wonder if that's common.
Are you like that with football?
Yeah, I wonder if that's commonplace amongst ex-athletes who played at a high level, because, Division I football, then played pro for 5 years in the CFL.
Which is amazing,
Canada.
by the way.
Yeah, and now I don't watch CFL at all. I couldn't tell you who the starting quarterback is for the local, pro team here. I do watch NFL, but the reason my life has been invested in college football for the last 7 years because of my.
It's your kid.
So literally, I know everything about college football from 2019 to 2024, and now he's at Cal Poly for a couple of seasons, and they're going to benefit from that. And I hope the team does well. But I wonder if it's commonplace amongst ex high performing athletes to kind of not grow tired of the sport that they came from, but it's like, I did that and I have other interests. Like for me, golf, like I'm obsessed with golf right now. And I'll watch golf on YouTube. I'll watch the PGA Tour. I'll watch Live. I don't care. But football, it's like I'm watching college because my kid's playing, and I'll watch pro because a lot of his teammates are now like two of his teammates went in the first and second round of the NFL draft. So obviously I'm going to watch those teams play. But yeah, I wonder if have you heard that before from maybe some of your ex teammates?
I think you bring up a great point.
Yeah.
I think it goes one or two directions. I think you get the individuals who can't get past their glory days,
Yeah.
who, they played college baseball, or maybe they played 3 or 4 years in the minor leagues. Maybe they got a cup of coffee in the big leagues, but then they just live in the past, which is kind of sad because they have so much more to add. And then you have some of the ones who maybe even played 10 years in the big leagues or played in college like me, and then it's just a thing of the past, and they're focused on something else. So, and they're moving forward. And I think those are probably the more high performing, successful, and even happier individuals. I know you've talked about it on your show quite a bit, victim mentality and comparison and getting stuck in the past and wasting your energy on that. And that's just a space that I've never been a big fan of. And so, yeah, I think it can go either direction.
Yeah, it's growth, right? And it's not to cast aspersions against anyone, but like you said, some people identify so fully and wholly with being an athlete that they have a hard time letting it go because that's their comfort zone. And you and I talk about comfort zones and breaking out of comfort zones.
Totally.
And how that equals growth. But then you have those guys that we know that we played college ball with that just can't let the sport go because it's who they identify and how they identify with themselves. And you're right, it is. I don't want to say it's sad, but I wish those people would learn that they have other talents that they have, and that they can break out of that. And that leads me to my question on imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome basically speaks to, am I a fraud? Like, how did I get here? I'm surprised I'm actually in this position. And you start to question yourself and you have limiting beliefs. How do you defeat imposter syndrome? Because I know you talk about it in your book. I know you talk about it on LinkedIn. So what is imposter syndrome to you? Have you experienced it, and how do you defeat it?
So one thing I want to highlight before I answer that question, for all you listeners out there who are ex-athletes, there is plenty more for you. I mean, I've got a couple people in my mind right now who are coaches, and there's nothing wrong with being a baseball coach or a football coach at, junior college level or whatever level they're at. And they're not necessarily that happy with what they're doing. And I see them, and I see so many business executives out there, and I've told these individuals, dude, you'd be so much better than so many of these other executives. And they always think, oh, I can't do it. I mean, that's imposter syndrome, right? But what I'm telling you out there is if I can do it, you can do it. And so I wish I can get that through to some of these individuals that I played with, and now they're in positions that they don't mind coaching, but they're not living up to their potential. To answer your question about imposter syndrome, the first time I really experienced it was at Pepperdine. I've always used to being the best of the best. Everybody out there is as good as me, if not better. And I kind of froze. And I ended up not working out there and leaving. And I got an opportunity to go to Arizona State. But before I went to Arizona State, a lot of people told me, Quinn, don't go there. They're going to have 17 guys trying out for first base. Go someplace else. Go to like University of San Francisco or St. Mary's, a good D1 school, but get your college degree and then move on with your life. And I'm like, screw it. This is my last shot. And I know I'm better than this. And so I just put that imposter syndrome aside, and I developed this 4-step framework that I didn't really know I had until I ended up getting in the business world. And the first step is labeling your fear. Like, what am I really afraid of? Okay, so I go to Arizona State. I don't make the baseball team. Maybe I'm embarrassed for a little bit. Who cares? I mean, 2 years from now, is that going to bother me? No, who cares? So once you realize that whatever you're fearful of, you can overcome, that's step one. Label your fear. Step two, and I know you'll agree with this, it's all about your show, effort. work hard. There's no substitute for work hard. There's no hacks. There's nothing you're going to learn on Instagram that's going to get you to being the leader or the 10 million followers you want to make $100,000 a month or whatever BS they talk about. And also when you're working hard and you have this, you're focused on it, I think it prevents you from worrying about this depression or anxiety of failure. So, because you're just putting in the effort, whether it's taking ground balls or hitting curveballs or practicing a speech or whatever it is. Step number 3, and I'm sure you experience this a lot in football, is deliberate practice. So not only working hard, but working on the right things. So if I'm having a hard time giving a speech and it's something around a transition, I'll just focus that and I'll just practice that 1,000 times until I get better at it. Then I'll move on to something else. Not procrastinate, just put in the deliberate practice and get that much better. And then the final step is, I know it's kind of cliche to say it, but if you're stepping up to the batter's box or you're stepping on stage, just stop thinking about the technique. Stop thinking about anything else other than, look, I put in the effort. Okay. I'm prepared. For me in the baseball game, I wouldn't be nervous because I was like, I've caught 1,000 ground balls. So let the guy hit the ball to me. I'm going to stop thinking about it. I'm not going to worry about my technique on it. And if I'm stepping on to do a keynote, I'm going to not let the nerves get to me. I'm sure I'm going to have the anxiety going into it, that excitement, just like you would, at the beginning of a football game. But I call step number 4, learn and let go. You've already put in the preparation. Just go out there, give it your best shot. You might knock it out of the park. You might fall flat on your face. But how we started this conversation, you're going to learn something. And you're going to learn and you're going to get better at it for next time. And give yourself a pat on the back again, because so many people probably passed up that opportunity because they were worried if they weren't good enough to be there. If you're applying for a job and to be a manager or something, whether it's internal or you see something online and you're worried, well, I don't know if I'm qualified to do this, apply anyways. Apply and go for it, because if you get that job, that means you're qualified to be there. Stop worrying about whether or not you're qualified to do it. Just go through those 4 steps. Do your best. Don't be too hard on yourself and see where it lands.
Yeah, and it's interesting you brought this up, and I love the 4-step method. I had a lady who I had on the show about a month ago. She had posted something to LinkedIn. I always follow every one of my guests on LinkedIn, and she had said, I'm super nervous right now. I'm getting ready to give a keynote speech at this conference, and I'm just like freaking out, basically. And I messaged her privately. I said it publicly too, but in a different way. But I go, you got this. I said, I know you prepare because I know your background. If you've prepared the best that you can, nervous is normal. It means that you know you've prepared and you expect the most out of yourself. I said, but all you can do is control what you've prepared and the effort you put into that preparation. Take a deep breath and just let it happen. You may make mistakes. Who cares? We all make mistakes. But don't be scared or nervous about the opportunity to get up on that stage and to deliver your message. And she messaged me, she just late last night, and she goes, it went awesome. She goes, I just basically decided to just let it happen because I knew I was ready. And that's the thing. When it comes to preparation and effort, one of the best things a coach, my high school coach ever said, is he goes, when you work hard and you prepare and you put effort into your practice and you put effort into that game, winning feels great and losing absolutely sucks. It's exponentially worse or better on both ends. So when you prepare and you put in a ton of work and you do get the win, it feels so much better. And then if you do lose, it just crushes you to your soul because of the work you put in. But what I'd like to take from that, and based on your 4-step methodology, is I want to bring those 2 extremes in a little bit, because let's not over celebrate the win. Let's celebrate the work we put in, which is basically effort over results. Recognize the win, praise the effort, right? On the other end, if you lose, be upset about it. That's fine. But let's let that anger and that upset and that frustration and disappointment turn into fuel and turn into, okay, what can I do different next time? How can we prepare differently? And that's what great athletes, that's what great business owners, that's what just great leaders and high performers do. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I guess I have a question for you on that. Is it something that you learned over time? Because for me, it really is. When I started out Learnit, And then when it came to sales and even leading, I would be super pissed if I lost a deal. I would hang on to it, I would get frustrated, and I'd over celebrate wins. And I'd go both spectrums. I don't want to lose. I'll tell you that. I don't like losing, but I also understand that it's going to happen sometimes, especially if you're taking a lot of reps, especially if you're getting out there and you're having more conversations and you're, I don't want to say RFPs, but you're participating in more opportunities. You're not going to win everything all the time. So at least learn from those situations. But it probably took me 10 or 15 years to be able to do that because the emotional toll of getting too excited or too down on yourself, it gets exhausting after a while. And I don't think it's necessarily the best way to go about it. So do you feel like for yourself that you've been able to monitor that and pivot over the years, or did it always come that way for you?
To be honest, Damon, great question. But to be honest, I think it's only really became apparent to me in the last few years since I started the effort over results philosophy and the brand of this, because growing up, I was results obsessed. I mean, you and I are at that age where that's what the 70s and 80s was, right? And then even playing college football, it's all about results. That's really I remember only one or two coaches, and these are the ones I remember the most, that praised me for the effort that I put in and could care less about what the result. Like they were happy if I won and so forth, but they would always recognize the effort I put into to what that resulted in. It's only when my kids got to high school and were competing in higher level sports, and then ultimately when my son went to Arizona, my daughter went down to the United States for a year to Missouri, that it's like, man, I've been parenting wrong this entire time, and I need to change my mindset to worrying less about what I call results-based messaging, which is only speaking about what happened at the end of the journey, meaning the game, the championship, the test, the sale, the project, of the result of that, and celebrating smaller wins along the way, and what did you learn along the way, and the effort you put in. Because I was that person that would, we'd win a big game, and even if we won the championship game, I'd still be, watching game film that night of the championship game that we won, going, where did I screw up? Where did I get better? And that's kind of when the whole thing started. It dawned on me that it is all about the effort. This is what I truly care about. I care about the preparation. I care about, what went into it as opposed to the result. And so these last few years for me has been focused, in this year in particular, obviously, because it's sort of come to a climax, has been so just not focusing on the result at all. Like I still set goals and I set ideas of where I want to head, but it's no, for me now, I can take losses better and I can learn from them. And I preach that to my kids, and man, it's changed their lives. And I wish like I said, Damon, I wish I'd learned this 15 years ago when they were little, but better now than never. And talking to them and to the people that I coach, whether it be educators, coaches, business people, stop obsessing over the final result. Let's talk about what you learned. Let's talk about how you grew. Let's talk about, the resilience, the grit, the determination you've built up during this entire journey. And it's super cliche to say hashtag trust the process, but it's true. And so, yeah, like my, I would say for 40 plus some years, it was all about, did I win or did I lose? And even when I started my corporate job as a business advisor, it was still in sales. It was 15 years long. The first 8 to 10 years, so that leads up to COVID, I would just get angry when I didn't get a sale, when a client decided to go with someone else. Like I would just get pissed off about that. And somebody told me, go, here's the mantra I want you to keep saying to yourself: help, not sell. And I went, okay, what does that mean? And we talked about it. And he goes, just be there for people, network, connect, help people, ask them what they need, provide it to them for free if you have to for the first while, just to gain their trust and to build that relationship. People can smell selling on salespeople. They can smell it coming from a mile away. I mean, you're in business for 30 years now. You know that if you have salespeople that are trying a little too hard because maybe they're having a weak quarter and they're like, man, I need to get a sales contract under my belt here or else, I'm going to get fired. And they get desperate. That's not a good feeling. And this is
No,
why we need to,
that's lack of effort.
yeah. but it's not for lack of effort, but because once again, I go back to my sales career, and I had one leader who would just keep reminding me that I didn't hit my run rate for the month. So it's like I had to do 30,000 a month, and he's like, "Well, you didn't hit your 30,000." Yeah, thanks, genius. I know that. You don't have to tell me those automatics that I know. And then I had a leader a couple years later that said, "You're having a rough summer. I get it. The market's a little bit weak, but I can see that you've got a ton of meetings under your belt. You filled the CRM with activities. You'll be fine. Don't worry. It's going to turn for you." I'm like, oh my God, like the difference in leadership. And this is what I want to bring to the companies and organizations and teams that I work with, is that mentality of stop beating on your people for not hitting their quarterly targets and focus on, did they do the activities and trust the process that they should be following to get the result. Now, if they're not, okay, now you can start to get a little harder on them, because it's like they didn't produce the result and they're not working hard. But stop ragging on people who bust their tails. And the thing is, Damon, and sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but this is business. This is on the sports field. This is in the classroom. This is your own children. If you just keep beating on them for not producing what you thought should be the result or reaching their potential and all that, but they've put the work in, that's horrible. We need to stop doing that. And corporations and organizations and companies, and when I bring EOR to a speaking engagement or to a corporation, or I'm speaking to business owners, they think it's this woo-woo, mindset bullshit, right? Okay, I'm gonna cut that out.
It's all right.
And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, there's research, there's studies, Google, Pixar, Patagonia, like Amazon, all have switched to a praising effort over results mentality. Google's Aristotle project in 2012 speaks to it. They found out that people produce and are more when they're in a psychologically safe workplace, where they're praised for their effort, not just results. And so, long answer to your question, but like I said, it's only recently that I've found this, and this is why this is my life's passion. If I don't make $1 from this, well, my wife will be upset, but if I don't make $1 from this, it doesn't matter to me as much as that I've helped people realize the beauty in this approach. And it sounds like this is what you do at Learnit too. Like, this isn't anything new. It's not like I'm some sort of prophet that's brought this from the sky. This is nothing new. Process over outcome, effort over results, trust the process. It's all messaging we've heard for probably 30 years.
Yeah, I look, when I have individuals first join Learnit, especially sales reps, I tell them, I don't really expect you to sell anything in the first 90, 120 days.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to be looking at. Are you showing up on time?
Yeah.
Are you coachable? Are you putting in the effort? Are you adapting and growing and learning? Now, but the truth of the matter is, if they've been around for 6 months and they're not selling anything, then there's something wrong. Either the process is broken, because that's why I'll give you a little pushback. You have to get some results at some point.
Oh, no, absolutely. Sorry, I'm not saying disregard the results. I'm saying, but look at their activity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when I made that comment earlier about a salesperson who's struggling because they're not going to hit their numbers, you're right. There are outside conditions that you can't control, market conditions, tariffs, or whatever's going on, chaos in the market. But what I found a lot of times, the salespeople who don't hit their numbers is because they took their foot off the pedal when it comes to the activity, when it comes to the effort. And part of that is on the coach, the sales leader. Look, I've seen that. We had a tough second quarter at Learnit, and I think part of it's because we had a great fourth quarter and a great first quarter, so we took our focus off of it, some of it. And what happens on your sales numbers now are a result of my friend Larry Levine mentioned 4 months ago, 5 months ago. It's the activity and the effort. If that wasn't correct or focused, that's where a lot of this comes in. So no, I'm 100% with you on that. And I that's really what I want. My kids are little. They're 4 and 8. And you and I spoke about this before. It's about the effort. It's about making mistakes and trying and growing. But I still want them to be competitive. I don't look, if they come in second or third place, that's fine. I don't think they should just accept it and say that they're never going to win, but just learn, get better. And I don't know how your son got into football, but I'm not going to force Walter, who's named after my dad, by the way, Wally, to jump into baseball if that's not what he wants to do. I hope he enjoys it. I hope he wants to do it. But at the end of the day, I want him to find something that he becomes passionate about, he wants to put a lot of effort into, and that he can be successful at, and be confident and happy about himself. I wanted to go back to one last thing. The best salespeople don't look at it like I'm trying to close a deal with this person. It's exactly what you said, Quinn. They look at it. I know I switched gears here, but they looked at it like, I want to help this client. How do I help them? And they come across as unique and genuine. And so I think, I said a bunch of different things there, but I think that we're on the same page with a lot of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that's pushback, Damon. You just wanted to clarify, but our messaging is the same. Once again, I don't want my audience to think that I don't think results aren't important, that goals setting isn't important. What I'm saying is that when it's all you think about, and you fail to recognize the work you put in, or for leaders, sales managers that are leading a team, if that employee is doing everything you're asking them to do and pushing hard, and they're still not getting the result,
it's on you then.
Exactly. That's where you gotta, and it's all, it goes through coaching too. And this is I had this conversation with a podcast guest last week. Is middle management, the team, the leaders that are leading basically the most important teams at a company, they're the ones I feel the worst for, because they are the ones that can't win.
They're getting it up above.
Yeah, and they're getting it, and they're trying to get it from below, and they're trying to
they're getting hammered. Yeah.
It's probably one of the worst jobs in anything. It's like being a manager, supervisor, leader of a team, because it's like above you they're saying, well, we need better results, and then below you got these poor people who you're trying to
I'm
push.
burned out. I need more support. But it's a very difficult situation. The other thing you said that's really important: the command and control leadership just doesn't work anymore. Leading by fear. I'm not a scientist, but there are plenty of studies out there that show that your brain, you if you feel fear, you fall back into stability and comfort. And when somebody falls into stability and comfort, and they're not going to get out of their comfort zone and try things, that's where the creativity goes away. That's where the improvisation goes away. And it has the exact opposite effect on what you're trying to accomplish if you're always leading by command, control, and fear.
Well, let's talk about it generationally, Damon. And we'll start to wrap up here. But think about this. You said your grandfather was a tough cookie. Probably born in the early 1900s, like my grandfather was.
Yeah, 1908, I think.
Yeah, mine was 1907. So they grew up at a time where, we're talking about wars, like world wars happening, and men were men, and it's like, listen, suck it up, princess. Yeah. So that's what he brought to the table. He didn't know any different. Your dad learned from that. Your dad now is part of the boomer generation, which still is very much about results and suck it up, princess, again, and being hard. But your dad also was entrepreneurial, and I think he understood the soft side of how to lead people. Our generation, Gen X, is the one that's kind of changing it all, but I think it's going to be the millennials and Gen Z in particular that are going to be the best leaders, because they are the ones that get what you just talked about. This isn't command and control anymore. This isn't a dictatorship, because they are the ones that are walking and protesting, basically leaving jobs, because, listen, I'm not going to be part of this crap you're throwing at me every single day. And
but I do wonder if they have the competitive drive that we have.
No, they don't. Like you said, I think the athlete types do, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of non-resilient athletes. Like, they get it when it comes to sports, but they don't get it when it comes to life. And I actually profess that it's our generation, Gen X, as parents, that, now mind you, your kids are a lot younger than mine, but the ones that have the Gen Z children are the ones that created this bubble, this protective helicopter parent bubble, where it's like, because we were, as parents, like the specialists and the professionals on TV in the 90s were telling us, here's how you raise your children. No matter what their talent level is, keep telling them how great they are. Keep giving them participation medals. Keep saying they're so handsome, even if they're not, things like that. And we thought, yeah, okay, let's try that. And we did it. And then you get these kids who are kind of paralyzed by, I was told I was great. I was told I was handsome, and apparently I'm not. So I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to sit in a bubble and in my parents' basement until I'm 35.
Yeah.
I'm being exaggerative, but at the same time, it's kind of true. And so now you have a generation of Gen Z kids who don't have that resilience, don't have that grit
Mhm.
and that toughness, but we've got to find that happy medium. I coach, teach, and help others learn through a firm understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. Let them know, be very communicative. But then I allow them to make mistakes. I allow them to fail. I allow them to try different things. And like you said, as soon as you lead out of fear, people revert to a comfort zone where they just feel protected, and they do as just enough to not get fired or just enough to not piss off the boss,
Keep their head down.
and they keep their head down. That's not a place to work at. Sorry.
Y- No, that's not a place to work at. And you're right, the Gen Z generation, because a lot of times if I get doing a keynote or just people always talk to me afterwards, like, what are we going to do with this generation? First of all, there's a lot of great things about the younger generations.
Mhm.
But the one of the things I say is, well, this is on us. This is how we're raising them.
Yeah.
This is the problem. That my big pet peeve are these in baseball, these $100 an hour, I mean, we're in California, $100, $150 an hour hitting coaches who get these kids who can't swing it at all, and they're telling the parents, "Your kid's got D1 potential,"
Ugh.
and the parents buying the $500 bat and the $85 batting gloves, and they're coming to me and they're saying, "Oh, I want my kid to be like you." And first of all, your kid's got no work ethic, and second of all, he's a sweet kid, but he's not even putting in the effort to do this correctly, and setting these unrealistic examples or expectations because you got some guy that you're paying $150 an hour who's lying to you, right? Not just being not being fair and honest. And it's the kid who's missing out. The person who's missing out is the kid,
Yeah.
right? Because the kid's been telling these fake things. They're not working hard, and at the end of the day, they're going to be very disappointed. And I'm concerned about them as future leaders because they're not getting the opportunity to skin their knee and have these failures that we're talking about
Mhm.
because they're so protected or they're told how great they are when they're really not. They can be great at something else. They don't have to be great at tennis or baseball or whatever it is and whatever their dad's wasting their money on.
I think it needs to be sort of a happy collaboration of support and trusting that process and getting that message out there, but at the same time being real too. Like you said, what you mentioned about baseball, same thing happens up here in Canada with hockey. The $400 composite sticks, the $8,000 pairs of skates now. It's crazy
Crazy.
because the parents think that's going to be what gets their kids to citywide tier one tryouts. You know what? If your kid's got talent and they work hard at it, you can put them in a pair of skates from the 1980s and they're going to be fine, right?
Exactly.
It's the
Yeah.
wizard, not the wand. Sorry. And so I love that message. So how do we find that happy medium? And we're going to wrap up here. How do we find that happy medium between still having a bit of a firm hand, being assertive in leading, but not being command control, but then at the same time helping others to grow? What's your final message on that?
I think my final message on that comes back to what you're all about with the EOR. It's really putting a focus on helping celebrate the effort of what they're putting into and helping guide them to also not necessarily look for my little Walter. It can't be what my dream is for him. It has to be what he wants to do and help him, go in that direction that he wants to go. So be there as support, but also provide the space for them to allow and try things and fail and just be there instead of pushing them in one direction or another and putting too much pressure on the results. I guess is what I think we need to do to help build better leaders in the future.
Excellent. I love that. Let's wrap up here. I want to finish talking about Learnit. 30 years, just celebrated 30 years. Wish I could have been there with you guys. It looked like an
We
amazing
had a great
Catalina wine mixer. Someday we're going to get together. Obviously, with my son in San Luis Obispo, we're going to have a chance to get together. But let's talk about Learnit and where Learnit is headed, because once again, 30 years going from the non-internet age into the internet age, and now I'm sure the AI age for Learnit. So what's new for Learnit? Where are you guys headed? What's the big hairy audacious goal for the company?
the big goal for the company obviously is you can't stay stable in what we're doing and just with live training. We are not moving away from that direction, but we're definitely starting to incorporate a lot more AI around outside of the classroom, which will help you become more sticky. For instance, if you go through our For Growth feedback class, and then you have to have a difficult conversation, in the moment learning, you'll be able to use the Learnit AI app and do a voice role playing with it. And I think that is going to be huge. I mean, we're not there yet, but that's what the goal is in the next 6 months, as well as, want to make sure that we really hone in on not being too broad on our offering. We're kind of honing in on what we're really good at, which is new managers and emerging leaders, and kind of focusing on helping those, as well as our middle managers that we spoke about. I think one thing that's great about what Learnit does is organizations who invest in their team, invest in their people are almost, I think a study from LinkedIn showed 86% more likely to stay. So that's why it's so important to invest in your people, because if you lose a great talent, it costs almost 200% to replace them. So there's always a need for live learning and growth. And I mean, I love it just as much as I did the first day we were here. But the reason is not necessarily what we do, Quinn. It's the people I've been able to surround myself with. It's my team. It's the talent, the people who came to our 30th anniversary party that you mentioned, who are now leading their own businesses, to the team that I have here today. So that's what's always motivated me the most when it comes to working at Learnit.
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge for you as CEO? Maybe not just even of Learnit, but just in general in the top chair. Like, what's the biggest challenge for you?
Biggest challenge for me is I'm kind of the guy who likes to chase the shiny object, and I see so many different things I want to do. There's just so many of them, whether it's AI or whether it's
That's the entrepreneur in you, Damon.
And there's so many different things. And so the challenge is understanding that change exhaustion does exist. So meaning that I can't constantly want to change and get better in all these different areas all the time. And understanding, having empathy for my team in the sense that, okay, let's focus on certain things and let's get that done instead of having these new ideas all the time. And so that's been one of the biggest challenges for me recently. If you would have asked me this question 5 years ago, I would say delegation, because I wanted to have my hands in everything, but I've gotten much better at that, thank God, where I've been better at delegating almost 95% of the day-to-day operations to Learnit, so I could focus, maybe unfortunately, on all these ideas I have, because then that cascades down to everybody. So that's pretty much what it is. And of course, navigating through all the uncertainty that happens in the world. I mean, we got 60, 70 employees and team members, and there's a lot of concern that they have just about what's going on in the world. And, I think part of your responsibility as a people first leader is to have conversations with your team members about what's going on in their life outside of just what's going on at work all the time. And, so I think CEOs or great leaders also have the burden of trying to help people in those areas too, which I enjoy. But it takes a toll after a while, because, you're having a lot of conversations like, well, what's going on with the economy and the tariffs and all kinds of crazy stuff. And you just got to tell them, like you always say, trust the process. We'll get through this. We've gotten through it so many times before. We don't have to have the answers to, because sometimes employees want to have answers to everything right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just trust. I told one of my top employees the other day, I told her, just do me a favor, please trust the process. We're going to get there. It's going to be, we're clear with our goals and what we're trying to accomplish. It hasn't happened yet. I'm talking about this AI stuff, but we'll make it happen, and everything's going to be okay.
I think one of the most interesting things I've seen in the 2020s since COVID and in the role of leadership is that teachers leading in a classroom, coaches leading on a field, business owners leading in their companies, parents leading their children, is that the role has gone far beyond just being a teacher, just being a coach, just being a business owner. It is now you're a therapist, you're a counselor, you're a coach, you're an advisor, you're sometimes a police officer in the school systems, right? And those leadership roles have changed so much, and this is why I think the definition of leadership has changed. And I would love to go down that road, but we'll do that on a different day, maybe on your show.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that on when you're coming on my show.
Perfect.
Quinn.
Love that idea. So let's finish off some fun questions, lightning round. I'm going to try to stick to a baseball.
Don't stump me. Don't stump me.
There you go. Okay. Best walk-off home run moment: the 88 Kirk Gibson home run or the 93 Joe Carter Blue Jays World Series home run? Or
Joe Carter.
Pick your own.
Joe Carter.
Joe Carter.
Joe Carter. I was at the, what you said, the Kirk Gibson one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually at the game. I think it was the game before or the game after, but no, I love the Joe Carter one.
I love that one largely because it was the first World Series win for a Canadian team. And it was against the Phillies, and the pitcher was on the mound escapes me, but
Mitch
man,
Williams.
I hated Mitch Williams. I did not like Mitch Williams. I'm a Tug McGraw guy from the 80s, but yeah, okay. So here's another one for you. Best curse breaking story. The '04 Red Sox down 0-3 to the Yankees in the ALCS, coming back to win it and actually sweep in the World Series, or the '16 Cubs and winning it in extra innings in game 7 against Cleveland in '16.
The Red Sox, for a lot of reasons. One was my old, I can't say roommate, but next door neighbor and really good friend was Billy Mueller, who was on that team and a good buddy of mine. Well, back then, good buddy of mine. Just haven't talked to him in a long time, but watching them go through that. So yeah, the Red Sox.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I picked the Red Sox too. Big fan of both teams. My uncle, who played for the Blackhawks for 10 years. So I was just a
Yeah.
Chicago sports fan. So when the Cubs finally broke the curse, I was happy. But the Red Sox and Yastrzemski and that whole thing was always my team.
I have a lot of
Yeah.
buddies who love the Blackhawks. All
Yeah.
my Chicago friends, they're a huge Blackhawks fan.
I bawled my eyes out when they won that cup in 2010 because it had been talk about a drought and a curse. Like they hadn't won since the 60s. Been 50 years since they won a cup, and then they won 3 in 5 years, which is
Well, same like
incredible.
the Giants, San Francisco Giants, 50
Yeah.
years. And then they won 3 World Series. And that's when I first met my wife. And she thought, well, I thought, isn't that just what they do? They win it every other year. I'm like, no, honey, that's not how it goes.
Final question, baseball related. Baseball player from the past or current who you think would make a great CEO?
Who would make a great CEO? My best friend, Jacob Cruz, multilingual, played 10 years in the big leagues. Never, he's got a great business mind. He's got his business, the Line Drive Pro, so he's entrepreneurial. I think that if he retired from coaching, I think right now he's the director of hitting for the Giants minor leagues. I think he would make a great CEO.
Excellent. That's a great one. Damon Lembi, what an incredible conversation. Where can people find you? Where do you want people to find you? Let's talk about the website. Let's talk about social platforms that you're on, and let's get the word out there for Learnit and for yourself.
Thanks, Quinn. I've had a great time speaking with you. This has been a lot of fun. My podcast, the Learn It All podcast, please check that out. I have a lot of fun. Learnit.com. If you go to our website and you see a class you want to take, send me a message on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Damon Lembi. I'll shoot you over a code for a free class, whether it's on emotional intelligence, having difficult conversations, or learning Excel. Please let me know. Purchase that on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or probably send me a message. I might just send you a copy. Who knows? So anyways, that's where you connect with me.
Excellent. We're going to have all of those in the show notes. Once again, Damon, fantastic conversation. I hope you enjoyed being on the EOR podcast today, and
Loved it.
we'll talk to you in the near future.
All right, buddy. See you soon.